Hey, it's James from 4x4 Earth. Welcome to track 54 of the 4x4 Earth podcast. Tips for newbies on heading out on their first four-wheel drive track.
Join James from 4x4earth.com as he learns all there is to know about four-wheel driving, camping, fishing, and getting out and exploring our great country on the 4x4 Earth podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Before we get into today's really important topic, I wanted to just quickly talk about the last three podcast series that we've done. So we've talked to Shane Rose, the president of Four Wheel Drive Australia. We've talked to Bill Schultz about the Bug U Group, the Bush Users Group United, and we've talked to Wayne Heavey from Four Wheel Drive Victoria. Now, we've had they've been really successful. We've had about 15,000 downloads of those podcasts, which means that quite a few people have listened to them. And what I would like for you to do is to share those details, and I'll put them in the show notes, a link to each one of them. Share those with everyone. If you're in a club, let everyone in the club know about it. If you've got a group of mates who go out four-wheel driving, let all of your mates know about it. If you're in a Facebook group, post it up there. I'm really keen to get as many people as possible listening to each of these podcasts because track access is only becoming harder for us, I feel. There's a lot of people out there who want to make it more and more difficult for us to be able to go out for a four-wheel driving day, for us to be able to go out camping overnight. They are complicated issues, and we've been really lucky to get a range of people talking about some of the things that we can do for all of us to be able to maintain access. And you know what? The thing that I think is really important that everyone remember, we're talking about access for me, we're talking about access for you, but more importantly, we're talking about access for my kids and your kids. So if you haven't had a listen, have a listen. Start thinking about the things that you can do. And the big thing, talk to your politicians, let them know that it is a factor that you're going to be thinking about when it comes to voting time. That's a big thing. But make sure that you're getting the word out there because I think it is really important. Today's topic is very important, I think. If you're a regular on the forum, you'll have noticed that over the last 6 months, there's been multiple occasions where people have gone out, they've gone four-wheel driving, they've gone out to enjoy either a great day out or a little bit of camping, and they've died. Now, I think that this is a huge tragedy, and I'm not going to go into the details or the specifics of any of the individual instances because I don't think that there's a lot to be gained from that. But what I do want to talk about, though, is some of the things that newbies can do when they're heading out off-road so that they are much better prepared for the kind of things that they may experience when they're heading out off-road. So the first thing that you want to be thinking about taking off-road with you when you go out is a mate. Now, this can be a little bit of a controversial topic. I know a lot of people, and so straight up, I went out off-road by myself. And to be completely honest, it was because I didn't want to look like an idiot. I didn't know anything about four-wheel driving, so I decided that I would go out just to sort of find out what the car could do, what it couldn't do. I'll include a link in the show notes to that trip because literally that trip turned out to be an example of if you do everything opposite to what I did, then you will have a much better trip than what I did. It ended in tears. We got stuck. We had to rely on the kindness of strangers to get us out. And it was quite a mess. Very thankful for my ever-forgiving wife for not divorcing me there and there and on the spot. Quite a messy day, and she and the family still come four-wheel driving with us, which is awesome. So, now, my question is, who should I have taken? And the issue that I had was that I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any mates who went four-wheel driving. That's a big problem. And I think forums like 4x4 Earth are the big opportunity there. And one of the things that we need to be working on, and something that I've been thinking about, is making it easier to provide the resources for people to go out to have that first trip. Because you don't just want to go out with anyone. One of the problems that newbies experience is that we're going to talk a little bit about it later. What track should you do? The track that you should do is a newbie track, straight up. And newbie tracks, well, they can be a little bit boring for people who have massive amounts of lift and, 42-inch tyres and all of that sort of crazy stuff going on. They don't want to be doing the easy tracks. So you need to be making sure that you've got someone who is sensible and who knows what they're doing when it comes to four-wheel driving. And in some respects, that's going to be potluck. For us, of course, there's opportunities like, our meetups, the ones that get advertised on the forum. I think that there's more work that can be done in that space. I know some people have gone out with other online sites and it's been, hey, everyone come along, and it hasn't been a hey, everyone come along trip. You needed to have recovery gear. You needed to have quite a bit of experience. And for those newbies who went there, it did end in tears, almost ended in disaster. If I think back to one example of someone who was telling me with one of their first trips. So try and find someone responsible. If you're struggling, reach out to 4x4 Earth, put the post up. I would like to go out on a newbie trip. Flag it as a newbie trip. Do that if you don't have any mates who regularly go four-wheel driving and who are happy to take you on a basic trip. So why is it important to take a mate with you on a trip? Well, we're going to talk about some of the equipment that you're going to take. And you know what? You're probably like me. You haven't massively fallen in love with four-wheel driving yet. You're not super committed to it. So you don't want to go out and spend $5,000 worth of gear on what may be the most expensive day trip ever just in the gear that you've bought to go out and do it. So you want access to some of their gear. You also need to think about the one thing that is great about four-wheel driving is that you get out into the bush. There's less people around. It's peaceful. It's quiet. You're there by yourself. And when you stop, when you get out to have a little bit of lunch, all you can hear is the wind rustling through the leaves and the birds in the trees. There's no distractions from mobile phones. You've got the peace and the serenity, which is epic, apart from when you have an accident and then it's not so epic because you look at your phone in a massive amount of frustration and think, crap, what am I going to do now? Because you don't have phone reception. You can't rely on waiting for someone to come by. If you're on a track that's not well frequented, then it might be an hour, it might be a day before anyone comes along. And this is the big thing. If you've got a mate with you in another vehicle, then they're able to go and get help. Ideally, you've got 3 vehicles, one to stay with you and one to go off and get help. That's the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about, because no one thinks about it when they're on the blacktop, because, cars come by pretty often. And if you have a big crash, then, sooner or later, someone's going to stop and they'll call the ambulance, they'll call the tow trucks. All of those things will get sorted for you. That doesn't happen in the bush sometimes because you are out in the remoteness of the glorious country. So that's a big thing to think about. If you don't take someone, what are you going to do to try and mitigate that sort of thing? There's a couple of things that you should be thinking about, and this is whether you go out by yourself or not, but as we'll go through some of the equipment, an EPIRB, recovery gear, shovel, tyre deflator, compressor, maps, tyre kit, UHF, recovery points, there's a lot of stuff in there. All of it is designed to mitigate some of the issues that could occur when you head out. So the first thing is, now I didn't mention it, sat phone. So if you're going out to a place where none of the telcos are providing coverage, then how are you going to contact emergency services? What's going to happen and it doesn't have to be an emergency. I know probably about a year ago now, there was the case of someone that was missing, and what had happened was they'd gone camping, they'd done a couple of creek crossings, it was all good, then there was a massive amount of rain, and they just didn't do the creek crossing because the river was flowing a lot. And it was all fine because they had a sat phone. They were able to call people and say, you know what, we're stuck. Don't worry about us. We got plenty of food and we're just going to be 3 or 4 days late. We'll wait until the river goes down. Now, a couple of things in that. One, they had a sat phone so that people knew that they weren't going to be coming out. 2, they had plenty of food there so that all they were doing was just having an enforced little bit of a relaxation camping trip. Weather probably wasn't that great for it, so they might have been spending time in their tent quite a bit. And they certainly weren't driving anywhere because of the fact that the river had increased. But that sat phone, that's something to think about. Next thing, an EPIRB, an emergency position indicating radio beacon. Now, these are monitored for, what happens is when you have a crash or when you activate it, the beacon goes off, it's monitored, the frequency with which it's on is monitored, it gets picked up and it sends your location so that people can home in on that beacon. Can be a lifesaver for you. They're not overly expensive, and if you're in a crash and if you're unable to communicate, that can be your way of signaling for emergency services to get to you. Can be a really cool bit of kit, a little bit of insurance. They're about $250. Now, recovery gear. And when we talk about recovery gear, and the one thing that you do want to make sure that you've got is recovery points. So if someone is going to be doing a recovery, and let's face it, you might get stuck and then someone comes along and they're going to try and get you out of the position that you're stuck in, you want to make sure that you've got recovery points and that you know where they are. Go through the details of your car's manual, because you don't want to be one of those people who is recovering off something like a tow ball. Those tow balls, they break. They are not designed for the kind of load that a snatch strap will put on it. So be very careful about where you connect your car up if someone's going to try and winch you out or snatch you out. At least take a shovel. When I went out on my first trip, no shovel. No shovel means no options whatsoever, and would have made a hell of a difference. I could have got out by myself without embarrassing myself if I'd had a shovel. Now I have a shovel. It stays in the car all the time because I never know when I'm going to need a shovel. And I've only used it a couple of times. In fact, I've used it probably more times helping other people out than I have helping myself out. Tire deflator. Now, something that isn't overly expensive. The other thing that you need with a tire deflator, of course, is a compressor. You are going to need to blow your tires up at some stage if you let them down. Something that a lot of newbies miss, it's one of those little facts of life that they're not tracking, is the fact that on a lot of tracks, you should be letting your tires down, whether it's snow, whether it's mud, whether it's rock. The further down you go, the wider the footprint you've got for your car, for the tires, and that means you're going to get better traction. Really helpful in the wet, really helpful in the snow. Something to think about as you're doing those trips. And I know we've seen it on the beach. People who get stuck in the beach and, they've been stuck there for hours and hours and hours, and we come along, deflate the tires down a bit, and they just drive out. And it was just because of the fact that they were running with tires at the full pressure. So if you're going to do that, you want to make sure of where you're going to reinflate the tires. If you drive slowly on the blacktop, which is certainly not a good idea. I know some people do it. It's not too bad if there's a servo nearby, but best thing to do if you're going to deflate is make sure that you've got a compressor. They're not overly expensive, nice and easy to get. Next thing you want to think about is a map. The number of times I've come across people who are lost. They've got no idea where they are. They've got no idea where they've come from, and they've got no idea how to get out. And that can be really quite embarrassing. And it's often people who haven't really planned on going four-wheel driving. Then they end up in a place that they don't have phone reception, and so then, they don't have access to Google Maps. It starts to get really quite complicated. And Google Maps isn't great anyway, because sometimes it'll show you a track that's, well, let's face it, it's a four-wheel drive track. It might be a really bad four-wheel drive track. And so there's been lots of stories in the press about someone taking a vehicle, not even a four-wheel drive, their two-wheel drive vehicle, down a track that they thought was a road and turns out not to be a road. But I think it's always a good idea. And what if your phone goes flat? What if it breaks? I was trained with old-fashioned paper maps. I like having a paper map in the car. Oh, back to tyres. If you do get a flat, and it can happen, can be not a bad idea to have a tyre repair kit. I had a tyre go flat on me coming down, I think it was Blue Rag. No, it would have been Billy Goats. And so we changed it on the track. When we got back to camp, Dave had a tyre repair kit. We repaired that tyre so that I would have a spare that I could use if I got another flat. You don't want to be in that position where you get two flats and then you don't have a tyre that you can use. That's bad. A UHF radio. If you're going to be going out in a convoy, you want a UHF radio. Everyone's going to be talking. They'll select a channel. Everyone's going to be coordinating the trip. It's a good way of warning people, letting people know what's going on, keeping up communications between the front and the rear of the convoy. You don't want to be the guy who's just going along without any idea of what's happening. You want to be able to listen in at least and be able to communicate if you've got problems. So they're the kind of things that I would be thinking about as far as equipment goes. Now, next thing to think about is the modifications. Which mods is it that you want to be making to your vehicle when you're going out on your first trip? Now, this is a bit of one of those things. There's only one mod, I think, that you need to make for that first trip out. Because remember, you may not know just how much you're going to love it. You might not love it at all. The number one thing that you need to be thinking about is your tyres. Road tyres are not very good when you go four-wheel driving. They may be okay when you're going uphill. What happens if it rains? The first organised trip that I went out with 4x4 Earth wasn't organised by me for obvious reasons. I knew bugger all about four-wheel driving. Nick J, one of the 4x4 Earth legends, he was good enough to be trip leader. We went out, and so I had the Patriot, the trusty old Patriot, and there was a couple of things with it. So it was stock, so no lift. That was a bit of a drama. The massive drama that I had, was I had the road tyres on it. Those road tyres were not good. I used to joke that they were Teflon tyres. They certainly didn't stick to anything, any part of the track. And it was really quite scary because we went out, I want to say either Newgie or Gembrook. Either way, it was raining during the trip, and yeah, I remember going down one, and I was literally just trying to put my tyres within the wheels, within the rear wheel ruts of that track, because I had no traction whatsoever, and that was really quite scary for us. Compare and contrast that with one of the snow trips that we did. I had some BFG all-terrains on, brand new, and we were driving with some people who had some pretty dodgy. They had some muddies on. They weren't great muddies. They not the type of tyre, just the wear on the tyre. They probably weren't super roadworthy. And I know there was lots of people getting stuck, recovering stuff. And I remember, so I was trip leading. God help us all. I was trip leading, and I was actually driving through the bits that they were getting stuck in, driving around. I had no problems whatsoever. The only difference was tyres were brand new, brand spankers. And to be completely honest, one of the regrets about this year, we didn't get a snow trip in. I made a conscious decision about that because of the fact that my tyres, they're not unroadworthy, but they're not far off, and I wasn't confident that we were going to have a good time four-wheel driving in the snow, so I made a decision not to. We'll get some new tyres at some stage, and we'll then be set to go out into the snow. But as far as mods go, I had a brand new Wrangler, and that thing was a weapon. Came with decent all-terrains on it, and all I ever did to that was what did I do? It was just a lift kit. I put 2 inches of lift on it, and that was really, really good. One of my other vehicles, I had a Maverick, the good old Ford Maverick. Now, what I'd done is what a lot of people new to four-wheel driving done. I went and bought a vehicle. It was probably 20 years old. God, it might have even been older. It was pretty light on for comfort, but decent amount of lift. It was already high up, big set of tyres. And for me, that was really cool because I didn't have a lot of skill back then. I still don't, but I'm a much better driver than I was back then. And I was able to use the lift and the tyres on the Maverick to be able to get me through a lot of places where I just didn't have the expertise to be able to get through. So you do want to think about what mods you've got on your vehicle. Think very, very carefully about your tyres because they are really, really important. And they are literally where the rubber hits the road. But think about the track that you're going to do in conjunction with the vehicle that you've got. As a beginner, the more capable your vehicle is, then you'll obviously be able to tackle, with some chance of success, a little bit more complicated tracks. Which brings us to the next topic, the track that you want to do. So Really, it's up to you. In Australia, there's lots of amazing tracks that you can do that will challenge a newbie. So the trick is to find something that's going to be challenging, but not too challenging. Because like for me, part of the thing that I love about four-wheel driving is the fact that you do something and your heart starts going and it's like, holy cow, am I going to, is this, it's that excitement of actually trying to get up the hill. You want something that's going to give you that, but obviously not too much that you're going to do any sort of panel damage or anything worse than that. And there's plenty of tracks out there, because if it's your first time out, you'll be looking for something fairly timid, just so that you get an understanding of what it's like to go four-wheel driving. There's lots of things that you can do. So snow, mud, rock, or sand. Sand, obviously, I think is a pretty easy one. As long as you do a couple of things, stay above the high tide line, make sure that your tyres are really low. Everyone can have a pretty good time with the sand. And, it's great fun. Kids love it. I love it. So sand is an easy place to go four-wheel driving for that first time. Mud, a little bit less so. A couple of dangers there. One, you need to be really familiar. Someone needs to be really familiar with the track that you're doing, because sometimes what looks like it's not that deep can be really, really deep, and you can get stuck. You can get stuck frequently. And there are people out there whose idea of a fun afternoon out is, for a 4-hour drive, winching out of a hole 5 times. Certainly not my idea of fun, but I kind of get why they think it's fun. So mud could be a little bit more dangerous. I, though, love mud. I love the mud going everywhere, but you need to be a little bit careful about where you go mud-wise. Rock, particularly with an incline, with a hill, and that hill, it is one of those things, climb the hill can be exciting. Can be a lot more technical driving, particularly depending on how steep it is. Whether you're doing a rocky hill or a muddy one of the big things that you need to be thinking about is the weather. And just because it's dry when you go up or down doesn't mean that it's going to be dry when you come up or down the other way out. And you don't want to be doing one of those tracks where it's one way down, one way up, because if it's dry and you go down and then it rains and it becomes slippery, you may not be able to get back up it. And there's a lot of those in the high country, you'll go down to maybe a mine site or something like that. Doable in the dry, completely inappropriate for a newbie in the wet. But if you've got road tyres, completely forget about it. Snow can be a good choice, lots of fun, as long as you've got great tyres and as long as you're not going up anything that's too steep. The steep hills, whether it's up or down, can be quite dangerous. And if it's wet or if it's slushy or you're going to struggle with traction, that steepness can make it very, very difficult. And a lot of the time on those steep inclines, there's not a lot. Remember, there's no safety barrier. So that's another thing you need to be thinking about. If you get it wrong, if the vehicle slides off the edge, then you're going to roll, and you might roll the vehicle a long way before it stops. And that is going to be bad. How do you pick a track? Well, obviously there's the 4x4 Earth track database. That's got a lot of data in there about places. They are rated by difficulty, but you've got to remember the rating process is moderately subjective, and it does depend on what your vehicle is like. Or you can get a mate to pick one out for you. We've all got some places that we know of that are really appropriate for people heading out on their first track. Now, there's 2 other things that you might want to think about before you head off-road, and that is joining a club and doing a course. And often those 2 sort of go hand in hand. You can join a club and then they will organise for you to go on a course before they take you out four-wheel driving. It's one of the big divisive topics in the four-wheel drive community. Some people love clubs, other people really can't stand them. And I like to think of, 4x4 Earth, it's pretty much Australia's largest four-wheel drive club. We've got 60,000 members and, over 250,000 people visiting the website every month. That makes for a pretty big club, but obviously a lot looser than a physical club. And we don't offer training. If you join a club, it's highly likely that they'll get you to do a course before you head out off-road, or you can just go and do the course. Usually a one-day event, and they'll take you through a series of parts of a track. They'll go through recovery processes generally, so that you've got a much better idea about the capabilities of your vehicle and how you can best employ the vehicle to be able to get up and down and around on the tracks as you go out. there is usually a cost involved with that. And from my point of view, I think the most I ever got was with a 4x4 earther in the passenger seat, taking me up some fairly gnarly tracks. So I'd been four-wheel driving probably for a couple of years, and Simo, who we've interviewed on the podcast actually, a relative of the Simpson that named the Simpson Desert. Simo was in the vehicle and we were out in the high country. We did some pretty steep tracks, and he just calmly, gently walked me through the process, gave me some of those real nuggets of experience that are just so hard to come by. Once the big day comes, a couple of things that you want to take: make sure that you've got enough food and water in case you do get stuck overnight. Make sure that you've got weather clothes that are going to be appropriate for the weather. I have seen people who have gone four-wheel driving in the snow and they are in shorts and t-shirts with thongs on. And they've been out driving with mates, and it's like, oh, hey, I hear we're not far from the snow. Let's go up to the snow. That's great. That's epic. I love that spontaneity right up until the point when you go off the edge of an embankment, the vehicle's stuck, your windows are broken, and you're stuck in the vehicle, and you've got no clothes that you're going to be on. And you will die of hypothermia quite quickly. Really quite sad. And it was shocking to see the number of people like that on a really cold, really snowy day. You need to make sure that you are dressed for the environment if push comes to shove. Couple of advice. I actually put this question up on the forum, so I wanted to get through as much of the wisdom of the collective group out there. And so if you're new to four-wheel driving, and you've got questions, jump on the forum. People have probably asked those questions in the past. If not, say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are the kind of things I need to be thinking about? Spooner had some completely epic advice, and that was, if in doubt, back out. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, then just don't do it. And I think it's one of the old sayings that come from piloting. You know, your best piloting is often done on the ground. It's the same with the driving. It's like, no, I'm not going to go up there. And it can be quite difficult because you get sort of that little bit, you know, when you start going down, it's like, oh, you know, it's really hard. Maybe I should turn around. Oh, it's going to be hard to reverse all the way back up. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I've been in that situation, and, you know, I can't tell you the elation where you just think, you know, by yourself on this really muddy track, no one going by, and it's like, oh, do I turn back or do I not? You know, the only thing I had going for me was I had a bit of a map. So I had an idea that I wasn't too far from the end, but that could have ended in complete tears. PHS, he said, walk the tracks. If you're in a convoy, have the newbies in the middle of the convoy. Know your vehicle, know your skill set, and know the roads. Triton 14 had a story. I get 500 metres up this steep rocky track with a sheer drop down one side, and I come to a fallen tree. I didn't pack my chainsaw, mainly because I didn't expect to be there. There's another lesson. Pack it even when you don't think you'll use it. Practice using your winch. Ensure you've got a proper tow point. Someone else mentioned, you know, when you do get stuck, stop the vehicle, get out, have a look, have a think, have a bit of a calm down. I've seen people, particularly in recovery situations, people go at the recovery situation like a bull at a gate, and that's when, you know, oh, look, just a quick snatch here. Look, you know, yeah, it's off a tow ball, it'll be right. And then just that quick snatch, and then the tow ball's come off, it's gone like a missile, it's gone through the windscreen, and it's hit someone in the head, and they're dead. You know, it only takes a couple of seconds, and it's because people were keen. They were very rushed to fix the situation. No one was thinking, and yeah, and then someone's dead, and that's a real tragedy. Mike HHZ said, you know, the tracks you see on YouTube look easier and less steep and rutted than they do in real life. That's an issue for younger, less experienced drivers who are also the most likely to have seen the clips. You can't beat being shown how to do these things in person. And this is one of the big dilemmas when you go at four-wheel driving. Always try and represent, you know, you go up some really steep hill and it's like, yes, I've done it. And then you take a photo of it and it doesn't look that steep. You do a video, it doesn't look that steep. It's just a fact of photography, unfortunately. And that's one of the things that you need to be thinking about, is that if you're picking a track off something that you've seen in YouTube and you go, it doesn't look that steep, you'll often get out there and you think, holy cow, this is steep. So that's about it. Now, we do have a crashes, boggings, fires, all sorts of things gone wrong page in the forum. I'll include a link there. Have a look and check that out. Have a look at the kind of things that can go wrong. One of the biggest things that I would say is just how easy it is to tip a four-wheel drive. People don't think about tipping because when they're new to four-wheel driving, because when you're driving on the blacktop, unless, you go around a corner at 100 kilometers an hour, or you go up on the curb, or you hit another vehicle, you're not going to roll your car. It's really hard to do that. Have a look at some of the videos of people rolling their vehicles, and they're rolling them at 5 kilometers an hour. I can't stress that enough. Your wheels, they get tangled up, and your car gets all mixed up mother goose, and before you know it, you've rolled the vehicle. It can happen so quickly at such a slow speed. So definitely have a look at some of those videos. I'll include a link to that. So that's about it. Check out the show notes. We'll have a list of all of the bits and bobs that we've talked about. And anything that I've forgotten, let me know, and we can add that to those show notes. I want this to be a resource for people who are heading out for that first time. So if you've got a mate who's gone and got his first four-wheel drive, definitely let him know about the podcast so that he can be a little, or she can be a little bit better positioned to go out. And because my thing is, I really want people to go out four-wheel driving for that first time. I want them to experience the thrill of doing something that they didn't think that they could do. I would love for them to have, that night out around a campfire, the peace, the quiet, couple of beers with mates. That really is magic. And if they go out, if they get panel damage or worse on their vehicle, or if they're in an environment where they really, really feel uncomfortable, they're much less likely to come four-wheel driving a second time. And we, the four-wheel drive community, have lost someone who could have been a really big ally as we try and keep tracks open. The more people who go four-wheel driving, the more likely the politicians are going to listen to us about track openings. That's about it. Hopefully you've learned something out of this. Hopefully you'll avoid some sort of... Have a listen to my first trip out and check out the boggings and rollovers page as well. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you on the track someday. Bye.
4x4earth.com is used by over 200,000 people every month to find great tracks, organise trips, and find out how to better enjoy exploring the great outdoors. There's over 1,000 tracks and 300 campsites ready for you to explore. So check out 4x4earth.com today and sign up to get access to the track information, ask questions, and meet other 4x4 Earthers. Membership is completely free. If you're looking for a good route, check out 4x4earth.com today.